Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking about Scream Factory, a company that has filled a lot of our shelves with horror movies on Blu-rays and 4Ks, maybe even some DVDs. The subject of today's video is Wes Craven's Cursed from 2005, so sit back, relax, and let's get right into the review. Hello everyone and welcome, Rapmaster C here. Today we're looking at the 2005 Wes Craven movie Cursed. It should have been probably a 2003 movie, but we'll get into more of that. So this is the new Scream Factory release of the film, and we're going to talk briefly about the movie Cursed, and we're going to get into this release and a lot of the special features that it comes with. But a few words about Cursed. I did not know anything about this film. I hadn't heard of this film. It passed me by. During this time was when I was going through Katrina, more or less, when I was living in New Orleans, so I don't think I saw a single movie in 2005 in the theaters whatsoever, so I guess I have a little bit of a pass. Before watching this movie, when this was initially announced, I was hearing all about the troubled behind the scenes about this movie Cursed, and was really interested in learning more about it. Thankfully, this release does talk about that, but again, more on that later. Cursed would see the return of Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson working together again. Just in case you may not be familiar with the importance of that, Kevin Williamson would be responsible for writing the film Scream and its subsequent sequels, with Wes Craven directing. So, on paper, that's a match made in heaven, right? So with Cursed, it's interesting. A werewolf movie in Hollywood seems kind of cool. I'm down with that premise. So Cursed stars Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg. They're brothers and sisters in the film, and when the two of them are driving home on Mulholland Drive, cue David Lynch, they see this weird creature on the road and then they get in a wreck. But when they go to inspect the damage around them, this bizarre creature kills the people in the other vehicle. This would cause Ellie, our star, to start sniffing people around her and acting like a dog almost. Needless to say, she was cursed. So it's obvious that this is a werewolf film by this point, and, you know, this is a movie that I guess my response is naturally going to be a little bit colored because of being kind of sped up on the troubled production and all the crazy things that went behind the scenes of this. And even so, I would say that Cursed was a fairly fun movie to watch. It wasn't mind-blowing, it wasn't quote-unquote great, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad film. I think it's briskly paced and feels pretty fun. It certainly has some really cool moments with its werewolf, and the designs are really cool. And some of the stuff that the werewolf does is pretty hysterical, like flipping off the camera. This is 2005, by the way. When I got done with the movie, I sat there and asked myself, did I like that? And I would say more so yes than no. I certainly would watch the film again. I don't think Cursed was necessarily bad, but it's just not going to light up your life. It's not going to change anything. It's is what it is. It's a fun werewolf movie that could be better, and I've seen better, but at the same time, I've seen a lot worse. Now, when I went into this movie, I decided to go ahead and watch the Theatrical Cut, which is PG-13, unlike the Unrated Cut. I wanted to do that because I wanted to experience what the world did when this movie came out, and I figured that would be the baseline review I should have for a movie like this. I wanted to just go in and watch this film the way it was intended for theaters back in the day. The performances of Cursed are interesting. There's some familiar faces like Judy Greer from, as we know now, the Halloween series. Christina Ricci is actually really good. She was a really good lead and carried the movie very well, and I think everybody kind of likes Christina Ricci. She kind of has that X factor that's just kind of non-Hollywood that we all just kind of enjoy from her. While I will admit Jesse Eisenberg has a face that I wouldn't mind just punching uncontrollably, I guess he really wasn't that bad. I just hated him in The Social Network, but then again, I guess that was kind of the point of his character. All in all, I kind of would give Curse a thumbs in the middle, slightly more to thumbs up. Again, you can feel the fractures in this movie and the weird character arcs, for lack of a better term, because of all the rewrites, reshoots, and things like that. But Cursed was fun, and the werewolf stuff was really cool. There were some really fun moments and exciting sequences. Now, in terms of would I recommend you purchasing this, that's a little hard to say. I would certainly say, see if you can watch this movie for a couple bucks on streaming before deciding if you want to own it. But if you're a Scream Factory fan, I'm going to assume you're going to buy it anyway, so I'm not really talking to those people necessarily. And in terms of the unrated cut, I would assume it's going to be more gory and a little bit more harsher because I think the film was initially intended to be rated R, but one of the many decisions that Dimension kept changing their mind of was to make this film then PG-13, which is what it is, I guess. So at the end of the day, I would recommend trying to see this film for a couple bucks before purchasing it if you're on the fence and wanting to pick it up based on certain recommendations. That would be me. I picked it up because it's a Wes Craven film and I'm a big fan, and quite frankly, I think it's one of the better deep tracks from Wes Craven. I've certainly seen worse from him. So, yeah. Safe bet. check it out first, and then more than likely you'll probably end up picking up Cursed. So in terms of this Blu-ray release, I will say that the picture quality was quite frankly phenomenal. For mid-2000s movies, when we were getting into like the digital filming, they did a 4K scan of this movie, and I'll be damned, it looked really, really good. So kudos to that. It's a 2-discer, so it comes with the 4K scan of the theatrical cut and also the 4K scan of the unrated cut. And the special features are good. There's not an abundance of new stuff, but they did include a lot of old school stuff and 2 interviews that are very significant. One of the interviews is the first one with Derek Mears, of all people. We just did a review for Friday the 13th, 2009, and he played the werewolf, and I will say, he was really good as the werewolf. The werewolf was big and imposing and moved with a certain kind of swagger that I thought, when I was watching this movie, that seemed slightly familiar. And when, sure enough, I saw that he was in the special features to talk about him playing the wolf, I was like, that makes sense. So he did a great job. The wolf is great in this film. I will say the effects of the wolf are great. There is some CGI stuff in there with him climbing buildings and stuff, but still, it's not even that bad CGI, so it is what it is. Sometimes in the mid-2000s, CGI could look pretty good, and other times it could just look like trash, and I could never understand why some do it well and some do it bad, but this one, it worked for the film, I will say that. And the other interview was with Patrick Lussier, who talked all about the troubled production of this film, and when he says troubled, he means it. I mean, that was probably the most interesting thing in the special features, was hearing him talk about how basically Dimension couldn't figure out what the hell to do. They would do screenings of cuts of the movie, and they would do in the 60s out of 100, I would assume is what he was referring to when he was saying 60s, and it would just make them want to reshoot stuff and make it quote-unquote better. Recasting Skeet Ulrich was supposed to be in this movie in the beginning, and they showed an image of that. They don't have any clips of that from what I saw in the special features, but what could have been? I feel like he would have been a much better role than Joshua in this movie. He was fine, but Skeet would have been much more of like that. For what this movie was going to be, I think Skeet was just a much better choice, quite frankly. So they kind of missed the boat on that, in my opinion. Recuts, reshoots, multiple endings, changing character arcs left and right. It was insanity. I think the only thing that stayed the same was Christina Ricci in this film. So this movie certainly lived up to its name. Cursed has many incarnations, and the one we got was filtrated, watered down, changed, and who knows what could have been. Regardless of the fact that I still think the movie is okay, when you look at what happened, it's quite frankly a miracle that the movie was completed with all the crazy stuff that they did. At the end of the day, am I glad I bought this? Yeah, because I enjoyed the film. It's a popcorn movie. It's not to be taken too seriously. It's a mid-2000s movie, so you can expect a little bit of that sarcastic, witty style humor. But Christina Ricci being in the lead certainly gives it a little bit of that X factor that makes this movie fun, and you certainly can relate to her character in the movie. Like, I guess something about her is just so non-Hollywood that she's just great. But again, at the end of the day, I would certainly recommend trying to see this movie for a couple of bucks before purchasing it, because while it's a Wes Craven film, it's kind of not, because the movie that got made was certainly not what he intended from the start. It's a Dimension nightmare is what it is. But it is what it is, I guess. So check it out and then decide if you want to buy it for yourself. That's my recommendation. So thank you guys for watching this review. Please let me know if you're a fan of Cursed, if you've seen it. Tell me about your thoughts on the behind the scenes. What could have been, in your opinion? Do you think the film would have been much better? Or do you think what we got was good enough for you? I'd like to know. Thank you guys for watching this video. This is Christian Hannah Horror. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you to all my supporters on Patreon. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, and music, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month.